Dun 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 dun. Just kidding, it's me. Welcome back to another video. I'm Trevor, and I am eternally uncool. I listen to a lot of music. Shocking, right? I've probably listened to every band in existence, and that's not an exaggeration. I assure you, I've listened to every band. The good, the bad, the basic, the weird, the mainstream, the underground, the successful, and the unsuccessful. Today, I want to look at the unsuccessful. Now, when I think of an unsuccessful band, I don't necessarily think of a band that sucked or a band that failed. No, when I think of an unsuccessful band, I think of the ones that had a lot of potential, but either couldn't live up to it or broke up before they could reach it. And some of these bands were really good and could have gone on to be huge. But what happened? Why weren't these bands bigger? Today, I intend to answer that question and more in the first episode of a brand new series. Now, what qualifies for this series, you might be asking yourself? A band has to have had some initial hype and success within their respective scene. National or international buzz. They had to release at least one full-length album, not just EPs, not just mixtapes, and they have to be underrated as hell. And I have the perfect band for the inaugural episode. So sit back, relax, grab a snack, and let's figure out, why wasn't this band bigger? When I was in high school, I was in my era of musical discovery, trying to reinvent myself through the bands that I listened to. I was getting into the modern emo classics of My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, but also hipster indie like Kings of Leon and the Airborne Toxic Event. If I had to label myself, I would call myself a pop punk kid. Even though my taste was eclectic, I gravitated more towards the punk and alt world. I was constantly looking for new punk, pop punk, and emo bands. I would go on sites like Property of Zack and All Punk and Punk News, just looking for my next favorite band. I would scour YouTube for hours, and eventually I stumbled on a band that would change my life. That band was Sharks. Trevor, who are Sharks? I'm getting to that. Be patient. Sharks are a punk alt-rock band formed in Leamington Spa, England in 2007. Their name actually comes from the song In the Belly of a Shark by hardcore band Gallows, not the aquatic nightmare beast. So there was also a 70s band called Sharks, which made it real hard to Google this band back in the day. The best way to describe their sound is punk. Like classic sounding punk. I always thought singer James Maddock had a kind of Joe Strummer-esque quality to his voice, so I always compared this band to The Clash. But there's also a Gaslight Anthem, Bruce Springsteen-y type quality to them. Blue collar punk, which is where the best kind of punk comes from. I discovered Sharks while on vacation in high school. If you wanted to know what I was like in high school, I was very much mopey. You could call me emo, but I think my unhappiness in high school really transcended even emo. And it wasn't for like any super serious trauma or anything. I just didn't like school. I didn't like the way they taught. I didn't like the cliques everyone was forced to be in. I didn't like the obsession with sports. I didn't like any of it. What I did like was summer vacation, because I didn't have to be in school for 3 months. I also hated summer vacation because it was hot and I had to wear shorts and I was insecure about my legs at the time. But that's a whole different video. So I spent most of my time in any air-conditioned space I could find. Bookstores, coffee shops, McDonald's. But most of the time was spent in my family's little tiny beach house. My room in this beach house wasn't really a room. It was more of like a laundry room on the side of the kitchen without the washer and dryer. But we put a futon in there and I made it my own little private space. I loved it. I could put my earbuds in and listen to any music I wanted to. Now, I can't tell you how exactly I stumbled upon Sharks. You fall down rabbit holes on YouTube. I was probably listening to the Gaslight Anthem or something, and the algorithm recommended Sharks because they kind of sound similar, they were on similar labels. But it doesn't matter how I found them, because once I heard this one particular song, my life was changed forever. Roll it. I hadn't really heard anything like it up to that point. Like I've said in previous videos, my music taste up to that point consisted of 90s alternative, Green Day, Foo Fighters, and a smattering of small and obscure emo bands. It wasn't until high school that my taste really expanded and I discovered bands like Snowing and The Wonder Years and Man Overboard. But Sharks were one of the first bands to have a huge effect on teenage Trev. When you're a teenager, you're at your most impressionable. That's why they make such a big deal out of peer pressure. That's why old people are so worried about teenagers learning things. Now, when I was a teenager, I wasn't impressionable to things like drinking. That would come later. No, I was impressionable to bands. If I found a band, I was all about them. They became my entire personality. Sharks was one of those bands. They had a few small releases in the beginning of their career. It wasn't until the release of their compilation album, The Joys of Living, which compiled tracks from the band's first 2 years, that they really started taking off, in my opinion. Fun fact, I used to own this album on vinyl, but stupidly I sold it because I'm stupid. Don't sell your records, kids! I remember listening to this album a lot, specifically the song Trains.
How pathetic this must sound to a hope of finally getting out. How pathetic this must sound to someone who doesn't even know he's bored of this town. Trying to make sense of whatever's next, that enemies of my goodness story.
This was another song that appeared on the Honda CR-V mix CDs. Man, I miss my youth. I really got into their second album, No Gods. This album is such a classic sounding British punk album. Not in a like snotty Sex Pistols way, but more in like a really good Buzzcocks kind of way. I wanted to say The Clash, but I already compared them to that band. Songs like Able, Moving Hearts, and Arcane Effigies really exemplify what Sharks were capable of at the time. These songs would be on repeat for a majority of my high school career. When I wasn't obsessively blasting the first All-American Rejects album, or studying up on classic emo and hardcore bands like Rites of Spring, I was listening to this album. So, now you know what I think of the band. But what did everyone else think? When Sharks started out, they were touring with a lot of hardcore and punk bands. Fucked Up, Gallows, Crime in Stereo, The Gaslight Anthem. They would get glowing reviews from publications like Kerrang! And Rock Sound. They were called impressive, thoughtful, and mature. After the release of The Joys of Living, they would tour with punk legends Social Distortion. And they would play on the 2011 Vans Warped Tour. Never been to one. Is that surprising? Let me know in the comments. By the time they released their second album, they were already touring with bands like Blink-182. It seemed like Sharks were on their way to becoming the next big thing. You know what? I'm gonna forgive you guys for not telling me that I forgot to put my rings on again. I'm not gonna put them on this time because I'm already halfway through the video. Unfortunately, on July 4th of 2013, the band would announce their breakup via Facebook. The members would go on to other projects. Singer James Maddock would start another band called The Violent Hearts in 2014. I listened to some of their stuff while researching this video, and they're really good. They got a Joy Division vibe to them, if Joy Division was a little bit more punky. After that, he would play guitar in a band called The Computers. And this band is dope. If you like melodic hardcore and Blood Brothers-esque vocals, you should definitely check this band out. And after that, Jesus, this guy's busy. He played drums in a band called The Nightmares.
It's too late to ask for. It's too late, too much to want more. You're a Salvador, I could be.
I also checked this band out in my research, and they're really good too. They're really gothy, which I love. We don't have enough gothy pop bands these days. Someone needs to start a change.org petition for more gothy pop bands. The other members would go on to form a band called Their Lonely Betters, and would release 2 songs on SoundCloud in 2014. They're pretty good. If you're into that, definitely check them out. They're still on SoundCloud. The question I want to answer with this series is, why wasn't this band bigger? What happened with Sharks? They were seemingly at the top of their game and on their way to big things. So what happened? On April 28th of this year, the 10-year anniversary of Sharks' third and final album, Selfhood, James Maddock posted on his Instagram. He said, "Lyrically, I laid it all out on the line and tackled some uncomfortable themes, which is why when it dropped and no one cared, I was embarrassed. Mad to think only 2 months later, I broke up the band and moved to America and stayed there for 1.5 years. It was the worst mistake of my life, and I only wish the other members of the band would forgive me." He goes on to say that Selfhood is his favorite album that he's recorded, and that once you listen to it, you'll really know him. An ambitious band makes a really personal album that really says something, and it goes unrecognized. It's the same story for a lot of bands, unfortunately. So I guess that's why Sharks wasn't bigger. It's super interesting to finally know all of this, but also super sad. They were really doing something, and if they kept going, they probably could have been huge. But hopefully there's some kind of reunion in the future. That would just be absolutely dope, in my opinion. Sharks weren't the most famous band in the world, but they left an indelible impact on a young wannabe punk. And I still find myself coming back to their music all the time. I'm even still looking for a copy of The Joys of Living.
I will find you.
I think everyone should check this band out. If you like the Gaslight Anthem, or Hot Water Music, or Dave House, or classic bands like The Clash and Joy Division, then Sharks is the band for you. They have a sound that's sure to satisfy any old school punk fan, but enough inventiveness and sheen to appeal to new listeners. Have you heard of Sharks? What other underrated bands should I look up? Let me know in the comments. That's gonna do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then you should stone cold stunner the like button. And subscribe. I post videos once a week about music and music culture and anything that interests me really, but mostly music. If you enjoyed this video, you should share it with someone else in your life who might also enjoy it. Your brother, your sister, your cousin, your stepnephew. Everyone should experience the wonders that is the music of Sharks. I'm trying to reach 150 subscribers, and liking, commenting, sharing, interacting with this video in any way really helps me out. So thank you for watching. As always, I'm Trevor. Stay uncool. And that's the end of the video. Goodbye.